The People's Republic of China has fully designated and listed all 13 precursors utilized to make fentanyl. Furthermore, they have agreed to control 7 chemical subsidiaries that are also utilized to produce this lethal drug. President Trump has shut off the pipeline that creates fentanyl that kills tens of thousands of Americans. These substances are now banned, and they will no longer be utilized by the Mexican drug trafficking organizations or any other DTOs around the world to make this drug.
Big news there from FBI Director Kash Patel announcing that China will crack down on fentanyl precursors, effectively stopping the flow of this lethal drug into America and across the globe. It comes as the U.S.-China trade truce faces pressure. Beijing is stalling its promised purchases of 12 million tons of U.S. soybeans. What a surprise. The country also reportedly working to restrict the flow of rare earth minerals to any company that has a tie to the U.S. military. This sparking a bipartisan investigation from the House Select China Committee into Beijing's dominance and manipulation of the critical minerals market and rare earth minerals. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you. A lot to talk about here. First, let's talk about Kash Patel's trip to China and this promise that they'll stop sending the fentanyl precursors into America. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a great triumph for President Trump and Director Patel. But we've got to remember that Xi Jinping has made essentially this same promise in 2016, 2018, and 2023. And the other thing that I'm concerned about, Maria, is that, yes, China could stop the production of fentanyl precursors, but they could then ramp up production of the precursors for the nitazines, which are far more deadly than fentanyl. We got to go back to the November 8th reporting of the Washington Post saying that China has been selling and flooding Southeast Asia in general and Myanmar, Burma in particular, with the precursors for methamphetamines. So this seems to be part of a broader plan on the part of the Chinese government to kill people. So, yes, we have a victory, but we got to be careful.
Yeah, and I saw that the U.S. had seized a record amount of fentanyl, enough to kill 100 million Americans plus. But I want to get your take on this other bigger story, which for me is even more concerning, and that is what the Wall Street Journal reported this week, that China has hatched a plan to keep the U.S. military from getting its rare earth magnets. Now, the Communist Party has tried to use rare earth magnets as a weapon against the United States. And after that meeting between Xi Jinping and President Trump, it looked like there was an agreement to resume the rare earth magnets for a year as the U.S. gets its own supply chains up and running. But now the Journal is reporting that China is planning to ease the flow of rare earths and other restricted materials to the United States by designing a system that would exclude any company related to the military. And any American company with ties to the U.S. military, of course we need those rare earth magnets, most importantly, for the U.S. military. Your reaction?
Well, there are various versions of what President Trump and Xi agreed to on October 30 with regard to rare earths, including the November 1st fact sheet from the White House. But in none of those versions would China be allowed to do what you just said, which is to restrict the sale of rare earths to companies that have U.S. defense ties. So here again, we have an agreement and the Chinese are violating it. And this is, of course, consistent with a consistent pattern that goes back over decades. The Chinese just don't honor agreements. And that raises the question, why are we negotiating with the Chinese when they don't honor their agreements with us?
I mean, this is like economic warfare, holding back on such an important product, even after an agreement was reached between the two leaders of the country. What can the U.S. do?
Oh, it's very simple. President Trump can raise the tariff on Chinese goods. President Trump can ban the export of even more tech items to China. There are so many things. Right now, the Chinese economy is stumbling. We're seeing this day after day with new reports from China itself, including nobody wants to borrow in China, which is really stunning. The point here is that they need the U.S. market. They can't get along without the U.S. market. And so, President Trump has so many levers that he has yet to play.
Meanwhile, I think this is also very telling. China is increasing its role in Venezuela. unveiling a, quote, zero tariff trade agreement with Venezuela, which would remove duties on Chinese and Venezuelan goods. Beijing also moving to increase its presence in the Western Hemisphere as the U.S. takes out suspected narco-terrorist boats coming from Venezuela. This is dangerous here. Any mistake is going to be seen as a fight, Gordon, because the U.S. is blowing up these narco-terrorist boats. Now Beijing is seemingly getting involved.
Yes, China is going to do everything possible to take over Venezuela. This deal, which would eliminate tariff codes on 400 items, really means that China will decimate Venezuela's local industries. That means Venezuela will become even more dependent on China, which means Venezuela will be even more of a proxy for the Chinese. And this is at a time when the Chinese know that Venezuela is like the #1 priority of President Trump in foreign policy. So this is going to be one more irritant between Washington and Beijing as the Chinese support Maduro even more than it has in the past.
I mean, you know, the Trump administration tries to walk a balance here by not alienating China 100% because we need them. We need their supply chains. But is it not obvious to all of us that we are clearly in a soft war with China right now?
Oh, well, that's clear. I mean, the Chinese have been very clear about that. I mean, in May 2019, they declared a people's war on us. People's war is a phrase which has great resonance. It means total war. The Chinese have been telling us what they feel. You know, we don't need to read between the lines. We just need to see and hear what the Chinese are saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, the competition is fierce, but it is way more than just a competition. But there is this new warning that the U.S. will face dire consequences if the United States does not win the AI race against China. The Center for Security Policy writes this: artificial intelligence is the Cold War of the 21st century. The sole and imminent threat to continued American AI dominance is the People's Republic of China. The AI dominance race will be won or lost within 5 years. The threat is existential to the future of the United States and the rest of the world, Gordon. Your thoughts?
That certainly is correct. You know, we actually control Chinese AI in the sense that we control chips, because AI depends on chips, and they need NVIDIA's and AMD's chips. And so this is going to be a question of whether we support China's competition against us. The one good thing I think we're seeing is that President Trump is negotiating these AI partnerships with various countries: Japan, South Korea, the Gulf states. That helps the adoption of American AI, and that's where we're going to be. The country that gets other countries to adopt its AI is going to win, and we're further ahead from China than China in this. We're much further ahead than China.
Well, it's chips and it's also capital markets. The U.S. has its capital markets leverage. They can yank those Chinese stocks off of our exchanges. China wants the deepest and most liquid markets in the world. We'll see if President Trump ever plays that chip. Gordon, good to see you. Thank you, sir. Gordon Chang joining us on China this morning. We will see you soon.